Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat?
You know it's football season on a Thursday when you hear Mike Triplett on AFR, and it's time to rekindle that. Get the series started once again here as the Saints are coming up kickoff a week from Sunday. They'll have the day off tomorrow and then get back at it preparing for the Carolina Panthers. But in the meantime, plenty of roster moves happening even after the initial 53-man set. Mike Triplett, neworleans.football. Mike, we appreciate it. How are you?
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of like your version of Hank Williams Jr.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. It's just, here we go. Let's kick it on off and on the road again. And here we go, man. I'm all for it. Mike, let's start. You know, it's initial 53's there, and it's such a whirlwind news day. And then all of a sudden, right after that, there's just more roster moves anyway. So let's start with the news of the day today, which would be Austin Deculus, of course, former LSU Tiger, 2019 national champion, signed to the practice squad. Offensive lineman. We know about the Saints offensive line. What do you make of this move, Mike? Is this more of a practice squad only move, or could you see a scenario where Deculus gets elevated here?
Well, I mean, if ever there was a team you want to get signed to, if you're a offensive tackle hoping an opportunity might emerge, this is the one. Look, obviously he hasn't quite broken through in the NFL. I think he has one career start, but this is now his fourth year in the league, and teams keep giving him a chance. The Saints like what they saw, so definitely a never say never situation. Not the answer we were hoping they would find. Even I was kind of hoping, hey, they're going to claim two guys off waivers, right? They've got other options, right? And it looks like they're gonna have to go into the season with guys we've been monitoring all summer, and those options are flawed. And it's going to have to be hopefully that Clint Kubiak and Rick Dennison and John Benton can scheme their way around the deficiencies there, because there are deficiencies there. So
are you thinking that they don't now? I mean, now that we're kind of this far into the process, are they just set with Fuanga and Penning and
I mean, free agency doesn't have a lot of, we've looked, DJ Humphrey's coming off a major injury. Maybe once he passes a physical, he's a guy they can look at. But everybody else is kind of still out there for a reason. They've gotten older. Their players dropped off. There's injuries. They're considering retirement. There's no real Justin Simmons out there. And yeah, I mean, I don't think the blockbuster trade is coming, or the major free agent move is coming. I suppose it's possible if the early results of the season go even worse than they think, but I think the timing for that would have probably been by now.
What about the left guard spot? I mean, is that you think that's still Lucas Patrick having that lockdown? I mean, is there any shot for Nick Saldivari here to break back in there?
Yeah, well, lockdown is a generous term. But yeah, definitely for week one. I actually just talked to Nick Saldivari in the locker room today. He's feeling good. He's going to be back in time for week one, but he basically missed all of training camp. So I think they're going to need to see him get back up to speed. I think they're going to need to see him looking good in practice. I think Patrick will have to falter in that role. They actually have a lot more options at left guard than they do right tackle. I mean, Landon Young and Oli Udoh have been working at both spots. Shane Lemieux has a lot of experience there. Kyle Hergel looked good this offseason. Saldivari, obviously. So I think there's a lot of guys they could consider at left guard, but Lucas Patrick is going to, he earned first crack at it. He hasn't been perfect in his career either. But I feel better about that spot than I do about right tackle.
The other kind of newsy thing that happened at Dennis Allen's press conference dealing with transaction was Kenny Wangwu failing a physical and being waived with that designation. That was an interesting move to begin with. A kick return specialist obviously does play running back, but I mean, you have Rashid Shaheed. What kind? I mean, it doesn't really matter now. He's not going to be on the team. But what did you make of that move? And is that a direction that they might address, a position they might address again?
Yeah, I actually think it is. I think it kind of showed their cards a little bit. Part of it is I think he's just a unique player, and he did work with Kubiak and Andrew Janoko and Rick Dennison. They were all on Minnesota's coaching staff with him in 2021 when he had a career-high 13 carries. So obviously he's only been a bit player on offense and more about return. But I think, it sure looked like Jordan Mims was going to get waived and sent down to the practice squad to make room for him when he wasn't in practice.
Yeah.
And now he's going back onto the active roster or staying on the active roster, but I think he's going to get moved down to the practice squad. So, it makes you think that maybe they had a vision for him being part of the running back rotation. And obviously Kenry Miller's at least 4 weeks away, if not more. So somebody with speed and pop to add to the veterans they have at that position, I think is something they will definitely keep looking for. I don't know how easy that is to find, though.
No, yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting to watch there. It was kind of shocking to see all of a sudden. I know he's had injury problems, but it's he's not. You just sign him, he's not there, and he failed his physical, so he's not going to be here at all.
Yeah.
The other move that I wanted to definitely touch on before we kind of got into a few other and kind of looking forward questions with the New Orleans Saints is the trade for John Ridgeway, the defensive tackle, out of who comes from Washington. Saints getting him and a 7th round pick for a 6th. Thoughts on the trade, Mike, and the player?
Yeah, I feel like we're looking at a rotational player. I think they really liked Christian Boyd, their 6th round pick. So I don't know if he automatically even moves ahead of Christian Boyd right away in the rotation. He might move ahead of Kendall Vickers in the rotation. Colin Saunders is going to miss a few weeks to start the season, so there's an opportunity for a lot of guys to rotate in there. And I think it was also part of just their sort of internal scouting report on him. As Dennis Allen said, guys that big, and we got to see him today. He is a big dude, man. He said guys that size who show that they have some athleticism and can move with that size don't grow on trees. So you want to bring a guy like that in your building and take a look at him. But, I think we're looking bottom of the rotation, rotating in snaps, probably nose tackle type of guy.
Talking with Mike Triplett, neworleans.football here in his weekly spot for football season on AFR, Thursdays at 5:15. You can hear Mike every week. Of course, read his stuff over at neworleans.football. Mike, receiver has been a very interesting battle, I guess, if you want to call it, not at the top, but down below after Shaheed and Olave. You got your full roster. Mason Tipton kind of making the team after a really fast starting camp, but then some injuries. What do you make of how the Saints stand at receiver now through through training camp and with the initial 53 out?
It's a really interesting position because I like everyone that made the roster, and I even like some of the guys that didn't make the roster. But there's just it's so like back end loaded. Like as we said, I feel like they have a number 1, a number 3, and then a bunch of like 4 or 5 types. But I like that they have above means showing promise, and Mason Tipton showing promise. A.T. Perry showed promise last year and then showed flashes of it in the preseason games. Like all those guys, I like having as developmental options at the back end of your receiving core. What they're lacking is, the sure thing, physical presence. Olave and Shaheed are a little redundant in some ways. Cedric Wilson will try to be that, blocking specialist, a little bit more physical than the other 2 guys. But, you really wish they had the Michael Thomas type. You really wish they had the guy who is going to win a contested catch on 3rd and 6, especially since there's questions about whether they have that at tight end too. So I like their depth, but I feel like they're missing like the number 2 guy that makes everybody else make you think that's the best position on the roster.
Is underrated a fair word?
No, because it's a concern. It's just not top heavy enough. There's so many teams out here, that have just 2 studs at 1 and 2, and another stud at number 3, and a lot of it is on Rashid Shaheed. I think it's really, really good that we are seeing him back, going full go at practice, running full speed. It's just a reminder, though, when he was out for a couple of weeks with that foot injury, just like how quickly this thing turns to a huge question mark if Olave or Shaheed aren't there at the top of it.
Sticking on the offense, switching gears a little bit. Mike, there's an old saying, right? The most popular player on the team is the backup quarterback. Well, the Saints
This
are
is taking that to an extreme level.
yeah, a little bit, considering they haven't even officially named a backup quarterback. Where do you think that battle stands? I know Dennis Allen said he wants to keep working them and keep having them compete.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this all week, and we talked about it on the show, and I'm surprised that erupted into what feels like a controversy and criticism, and like everything Dennis Allen said felt no duh to me. And I actually was talking to Jake Haener the other day about one thing NFL teams do a horrible job of is developing young backups. And there were years in the past where Garrett Grayson was the number 3, Ian Book was the number 3, and it was kind of like, all right, we'll see you next year. You know, you can come watch practice. But they don't run the scout team. They don't, they don't rotate in and get plays. They basically never are on the field with the rest of the team running the Saints offense all year. And now one thing they did with Jake Haener last year that I thought was good is he split reps with the scout team with Jameis Winston. They wanted to keep developing Haener a little bit and give him that work, but he still didn't really feel like he was quote-unquote developed. And he said he's really excited about what Andrew Janocko and Clint Kubiak have expressed their intention to do, which is work with them before practice, work with them after practice, walk through plays, let them throw the plays, and that it's important to them to develop their young guys. And to develop both of their young guys and not pick one that's getting tossed aside for the rest of the year. I think the uproar is that I think my interpretation is fans just want to hear that Spencer Rattler has been named number 2 and that he's competing for number 1. You know, I mean, I don't think they want to hear anything other than Spencer Rattler will be starting by the end of September. But I'd be shocked if they were tossing Jake Haener aside. And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if Jake Haener is number 2 in week 1. He's slightly more polished or experienced just from a year in the league, even though it didn't come with snaps on the field. But nobody denies the upside of Spencer Rattler. And if he was the number 3, nobody would want to see him not work with the number 3. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fascinating to watch. And I think even more so from a, not just a Spencer Rattler should start type, fan narrative, the use that the Saints, the necessity that is the backup quarterback for the New Orleans Saints the last, half decade, I mean, makes that battle all the more intriguing because, I mean, odds are you're going to need them at some point. At least that's what recent history has shown with the New Orleans Saints. Couple more things for you, Mike, and we'll let you go. Your time very much appreciated. Marshon Lattimore, any update you can give us on how he's looked now that he's returned out there?
I think the most promising news of the week is showing up in practice yesterday and today and seeing him out there doing just about everything. Dennis Allen said he'd still be categorized as limited if they were putting out an injury report, but we're only out there for the first 30 minutes now. It's clandestine mode, but he was doing everything we saw. And I feel a whole win better, in my projection for this team. If I know he's in the starting lineup and full speed ahead in week 1, I really do.
That's good news to hear. And last one, I'll get you out of here on this, Mike. Dennis Allen today said he was asked about any remaining holes on the roster, and you said, he feels pretty good. Are there any remaining holes that you see on the roster? I guess offensive line notwithstanding.
Yeah, I mean, there are for sure places that could badly use an upgrade. I mean, right tackle, the receiver, that's kind of a sure thing on 3rd and 6, the tight end position, even beyond Juwan Johnson and Foster Moreau, speed at running back. There are places where they could absolutely upgrade. Where answers exist, though, where there's guys around the corner that could upgrade what they have in the locker room, I think that's really hard to find. I think for the most part, we're looking at the kind of transactions that we've seen this week as the level of transaction you should expect for this team.
He is Mike Triplett on Twitter at Mike Triplett, neworleans.football, with us every Thursday here on AFR. Mike, we appreciate it. Glad to be doing it again, and we'll preview the Panthers next week.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.